Welcome to Zoom and Vroom with the Polk County History Center. Today we are exploring the historic communities of Kathleen, Lakeland, and Mulberry. Kathleen, Lakeland, and Mulberry are connected by more than Highway 98 and the occasional alligator. Each has carved a unique identity in the Central Florida landscape that will linger for decades to come. In preparation for today's Zoom and Vroom program, please have your packet of materials ready and a sense of adventure. We're going to go live in 3, 2, 1. Hello everyone, and welcome to Zoom and Vroom, live from the PG TV studios here in Bartow. My name is Jayme Jamison, and I am the Curator of Education and Visitor Engagement at the Polk County History Center. More importantly, on the second Saturday of each month, I transform into your Polk County History and Heritage Fairy Godmother. A little housekeeping before we begin. We can expect the program to last approximately 45 minutes. Now, if you can't stay with us that long, that's okay. You can catch us on repeat on our YouTube page by searching for Polk County Government and on PGTV, which is on Spectrum Channel 644, Frontier Channel 20, or Comcast Channel 5 in Polk County. We'll be monitoring the chat and collecting questions to answer at the end of the segment, so feel free to ask away. All right then, let's get started. When we think about the western portion of Polk County, so many iconic images come to mind. From Kathleen to Mulberry, there's so much to see. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? For me, it's the Publix birthday cake water tower. I know, it's weird. But when I first moved to Polk County from Orlando, everyone kept telling me it was something that you had to see. And wouldn't you know it, we drove by and I said, okay, that's really cool, I did have to see that. For this tour, we've selected sites that are similar to the water tower. Maybe you've driven by them before and didn't know what they were or where they came from. You could consider this your hidden in plain sight tour. This month, we start near the Polk County, Pasco County line. And if you'll recall from last month, we went out and visited a citrus marker. Well, this is the second of 3 markers that were erected in 1930. Now, I won't be sending you out to see the third, as it's located on some railroad tracks and it's not exactly safe for scouting. Your second stop, though, brings you out to Gator Creek Reserve. Perfect for scouting. Gator Creek Reserve is part of Polk County's Environmental Lands program, which acquires, preserves, protects, manages, and restores endangered and environmentally sensitive lands, water resources, and important wildlife habitats. If you've ever paid a visit to Circle B Bar Reserve, guess what? You've engaged with the Environmental Lands program. Now, my specialty is history, so to help us explore the reserve today, I've brought in a little no, I haven't brought in a little alligator. I've brought in a specialist. Her name is Candice Knothe, and she's going to talk to us a little bit more about the reserve and the programs. Welcome, Candice.
Hi, good morning. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. It's always fun to talk to the people that are out in the community, really making a difference with the beautification and what we enjoy so much about Polk County. Now, you are, and this is a very long title, you are a Environmental Land Stewardship Coordinator with Polk County. Can you tell us a little bit more about that job and how you got there?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. It's a really long title, but I do a bunch of different things, and one of the things I really do is I help oversee and run Circle B Bar Reserve. So you'll often see me here at the reserve and out on the trails. In addition to that, I also help oversee the environmental education program. So I get to work with the public and students. I work with a great group of volunteers here that donate their time and their talents with us. I also work with college interns to help give them experience with careers in natural resources. And on the land management side of things, I help plan and also implement prescribed fires on our natural areas that need them. I help monitor rare plants, and I work with wildlife. And then I also get to work on some special projects that help to enhance and do some habitat restoration for our natural areas as well.
Oh, wow. So you've got a pretty big sphere of influence and a big plate of responsibilities. I know I'm one of those people, anytime I see smoke, I have to look up what's going on, and usually it's one of the prescribed fires. Can you very briefly explain like what a prescribed fire is and maybe some of the training that you had to do to participate in that?
Sure. Yeah. So a prescribed fire is really one of our best land management tools to help get fire in areas that need fire. So a lot of Florida's habitats actually need fire to regenerate and keep their ecosystems healthy for the plants and animals. And so prescribed fires are very strategic. A lot of planning goes into place. The weather has to be right. The winds have to be right. And there's often a prescription that goes with it, and you have to have a permit to do them.
Oh, wow. So speaking of the lands program and preserving it, can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly the environmental lands program is, and how did the county acquire all these lands?
Yeah, the county back in the 90s worked through a grassroots effort to build up this program to help acquire these environmentally sensitive lands. So it just grew from there. There are over 11 sites that are open to the public for passive recreation for things like hiking, biking, bird watching, nature photography. And we have a dedicated group of staff that help to manage and protect these areas.
Wow, it's always interesting when you go out into those areas to kind of think of the early peoples, whether they're the indigenous groups or the pioneers here to Polk County, and walk through there and go, oh my gosh, somebody had to cut out a living here and learn how to acclimate to Florida, which, you know, we all know can be really, really hot and not so fun sometimes. So it's really interesting to go out there. Now, in addition to that, when we're out there and we're walking the paths, we're going to see maybe some wildlife. And is there a better time to go during the day if you are interested in catching birds, or not catching them, but photographing birds and that sort of thing?
Yeah, generally, early morning and dusk are the best times to see wildlife. You'll see a lot of bird activity early in the morning, and then kind of at dusk, you'll start to see some other wildlife kind of get ready and be active. You'll hear barred owls and great horned owls kind of starting to be more active at that time of day.
Now, Gator Creek Reserve has a couple different trails, and one of them, I believe, is paved. Can you tell us a little bit more about that trail and maybe who it's ideal for?
Yeah, Gator Creek is lucky in that it has that Cypress Loop Trail. It's about zero point 0.6 miles long, and it's really great for people with mobility issues, or maybe people who are pushing a stroller with their kids. So it's really accessible for everyone.
All right. So now we talked about some of the birds that we'll see and some of the unique plants. You know, are there things that people should not be doing when they're out walking the trail?
That is a great question. I always tell people to be wildlife smart. So if you see an animal up ahead, maybe crossing the path or blocking the path, I just say enjoy it from afar and turn around and go back the other way. I also tell people to pack in and pack out. So any sort of items that you bring with you, whether it be drinks or trash, make sure you dispose of it at the parking area in the receptacle so that it doesn't end up in the water, end up in the bellies of the wildlife. And lastly, I encourage people to just leave everything as they found it. So leave all the plants, the rocks, the artifacts on the trails.
All right. Now, when they're walking through the trails, some of it's got some canopy, and I think we talked once about the cypress dome. Can you kind of explain a little more about that?
Yeah, so Gator Creek Preserve is a great place to see a cypress dome close up. And a cypress dome really is a forested wetland that's dominated by these really cool, large, massive cypress trees. And they're cool in Florida because they're deciduous, meaning that they lose their leaves in the fall and the winter. And right now, you can look for them on the trail. They're starting to green up. And so look for those signs of spring. Look for the yellow-green needles starting to come out of the cypress trees.
Wow, yeah, I know. We're not used to leaves falling. We're just, used to more Spanish moss accumulating. Now, Spanish moss, we have a little bit of a passion for it at the History Center because, of course, it looks very old Florida and historic. And we know that it was used for like stuffing mattresses and pillows during the pioneer era. But what is Spanish moss? What does it do? And should people be taking it home with them?
That's a great question. Spanish moss isn't actually a moss, it's a flowering plant, and it's in the same family as the bromeliads, which is the pineapple and the succulents.
Oh.
Spanish moss is really interesting, and it does have a really special role in the ecosystem. It's an epiphyte, and it just sits on a tree. It doesn't damage a tree or anything like that, but it gets its nutrients from the air and the water and some of the debris that falls on it. So it's not hurting the tree at all. It's just kind of living there, but it's really important for birds because it provides nesting material. And then also animals like amphibians, reptiles, and bats will actually use it to shelter in.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that it had that much of a purpose. I, of course, was like, oh, it's just pretty. That's what it's there for, to make the trees pretty. All right, so we're going to go ahead and turn it over and see. I'm going to check with Yasmin in the studio, see if we have any questions. But I did have someone contact me ahead of the program with a question that I think is a great one. And she knows that at Circle B Bar Reserve, she's not to bring her dog, but she was wondering, can she bring her dog on a leash out to Gator Creek?
Yes, your dog can go on a walk at Gator Creek as long as it is leashed at all times.
Perfect. All right, we're not seeing any questions at the moment, but I have one final question for you. And if you're watching this and you think of a question later in the program, feel free to still ask it. We'll go back at the end and kind of collect those questions, and I'll reach out to Candice separately and see if we can get some answers for you. But my question, being in the Environmental Lands program, you probably get to see a lot of behind the scenes wildlife and activity that most of us don't get to see. So what is your most rewarding moment out on the Lands program?
I actually have way too many to name. I'll just name a few if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy being on prescribed fires and getting those ecosystems healthy that need it. So being on prescribed fires to me is very rewarding. I also love working with the gopher tortoise. We have a research permit, and I work with gopher tortoises quite a bit, and seeing them kind of being released into our uplands as part of our WAVE program, it's very rewarding. But I also enjoy working with kids a lot. So when I get to have the students on our site getting excited and getting dirty and being hands-on out in nature, that's very rewarding to me as well.
Okay, and one last follow-up question. Have you met Blinky? And is he really quite docile and cool when he hangs out there at Circle B?
Yes, all of the wildlife are pretty docile, and we just keep a safe distance with them.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Candice. I have enjoyed having you on today, and I'm looking forward to getting out to Gator Creek with my family, especially on that paved trail. That's right up my alley. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll touch base with Environmental Lands again throughout the year.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Gator Creek Reserve is located in North Lakeland at 9725 US 98 North. Visiting is free, and the reserve is open from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. during standard time and 5:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the long summer days. Now, from the edge of the Green Swamp, our next stop on the journey takes us to the Soakrum and the Kathleen area. We're going to go ahead and join Myrtice out on the Heritage Trail to learn more about one of the historic sites in this community.
Today's stop on the Heritage Trail brings us to Bethel Baptist Church, located in the historic Soakrum community, one of the earliest settled communities in Polk County. Families arrived here more than 150 years ago in search of land suitable for agriculture and cattle grazing. Following the end of the Second Seminole War in the early 1840s, pioneers began establishing homesteads on newly available lands in Central Florida. Early families arrived in the Socrum area in the 1840s and early 1850s, setting up some of the earliest settlements in Polk County. The origin of Socrum's name remains a mystery. Some believe the name evolved from Soak Run, a description for a marshy or boggy area trail traveled by locals, or from a nearby military outpost called Fort Slocum. Another legend suggests the name was derived from soak rum, after the Native American custom of storing strong libations in Indian Pond. Before the establishment of a permanent church, religious services were often held in the homes of the private families in the community. Records show that one such service was held August 1851 at the home of William Rushing at Indian Pond in the Socrum community. Jeremiah M. Heyman was one of several Baptist circuit riders who served the Socrum community. He preached his first sermon in 1851 at Indian Pond, the location where Bethel Baptist Church was later built. Heyman was formally ordained to the ministry in November 1851 and became the first regular pastor of the church. A total of 4 churches have served the Bethel Baptist congregation. The first formal meeting place was a log cabin built on land donated in the mid-1850s. The church structure doubled as a school for the children of the community 3 months out of the year. The second church was constructed in 1890 and stood near Indian Pond, the site of the church's baptisms until 1930 when the structure was moved. The building still stands in the community today and has since been converted into a private home. The third church was completed in 1929 and was beautifully crafted with the rich red bricks. Standing between large oak trees, the church was at one point the largest rural church structure in Florida and one of the largest in the South. It remains one of the most iconic and easily recognizable buildings in Socrum. To accommodate the growth of the congregation, the present-day church was completed in 2006, complete with the sanctuary that can hold 1,250 people. Bethel Baptist Church remains a sacred cornerstone of the Socrum community, providing a deep sense of place for generations of residents who have called the church home.
Socrum. Socrum. That is probably one of the most unique toponyms, which is the study of names of locations in the county. So I had to know more about this, so I went to an expert. And while there are several theories about the name of Socrum, most agreed that it's either a reference to the wet, swampy lands that the pioneers and Seminoles traversed, or the fact that pioneers stored their barrels of rum in the nearby Indian Pond, soaking them. I really feel like there's a Johnny Depp movie in there somewhere. So call me. From Socrum, you'll continue down 98, stopping by the Carpenter's Home, or as some of you may have encountered it years ago, Carpenter's Church. The site is a privately owned assisted living center, so please make sure to stick to the exterior only. You'll then be on your way to the Moorhead marker at the RP Funding Center on Lime Street. The marker commemorates the predominantly Black community that existed at this site beginning in the late 1800s. In 1971, the city of Lakeland purchased the land through eminent domain, and the existing homes and businesses were either moved or razed to build the new auditorium. Today, it is remembered in the memories of a few remaining former residents and in the archives generously provided to the History Center by Miss LaFrancine Burton. Visiting the site may prompt questions about race and the era of segregation, specifically from children. I encourage you to acknowledge their feelings and share some tools to help them understand that history captures a moment in time, and that if we do things and we ask for change, things can change for the better. Today we are reading an excerpt from the book, We're Different, We're the Same, by Bobby Jane Cates. This book is especially good for younger learners. Older students may enjoy The Day You Begin by Jacqueline Woodson. This book talks about the experience in the classroom. It may be particularly meaningful for those students. Now my older learners and adults will appreciate Let's Talk About Race. This incredible book employs the power of storytelling to help people identify the differences that make them the same. This book is interactive, so it is best for a group setting. All right, let's get to We're Different, We're the Same by Sesame Street and Bobby Jane Cates. Our skin is different. Our skin is the same. It tells us if something's cold or hot, wet or dry. It knows a lot. Muscles and bones are wrapped inside it. We all have blood and skin to hide it. It keeps in warmth, it keeps out dirt. It warns us so we don't get hurt. Our eyes are different. Our eyes are the same. They see, they blink, they weep, they wink. We're the same, we're different. That's what makes the world such fun. Many kinds of people, not just one. A rainbow would be boring if it were only green or blue. What makes a rainbow beautiful is that it has every hue. So aren't you glad you look like you? We're different, we're the same. If you'd like to discover more about Black history in Polk County, we encourage you to come down to the History Center and ask about our exhibit and resource guide. From the Moorhead community, we scuttle across town to the Coca-Cola building, which you've probably walked by or driven by but might not have noticed. This site is best seen from the Francis Langford Promenade on Lake Muir. Grab a parking spot nearby and take in the view. For more information about the promenade, let's catch up with PGTV's Encounter Polk.
Well, I've made it to the other side of the lake, and I am joined now by Stacy Smith. He's the foreman at Hollis Gardens, but he also provides tours for people on the history of Lake Muir. And you're kind of like a local expert, not self-proclaimed expert. You really do know the history of this area. So thank you for giving me a personal tour.
You're welcome.
First of all, I've got to ask you, right here in front of us, as the lake is behind us, but I see this big swan, and I see swans all over the city. What is up with the swans here in Lakeland?
Well, it's a tradition that goes back to the 1950s. The Queen of England gave us a pair of mute swans from the royal flock to replenish the ones that we had on Lake Morton that were wiped out by a disease. And they've been here ever since. All of the white mute swans on Lake Morton are descendants of those swans.
So when you see swans in Lakeland, they're royalty. So that's interesting. I bet you a lot of people probably didn't know that. So that's pretty cool. Now this is, I guess, bronze?
Yeah, this is a bronze sculpture that was dedicated to Wilfred Wolfson. Now, Mr. Wolfson was a pharmacist here in Lakeland, and his father came here after the turn of the century. He was born in Lithuania. He was a Jewish immigrant, and he made his way to Lakeland via Siberia, New York, where he got involved into textiles, and he brought the textile industry to Lakeland and opened up the famous department store just down the block. And Wilfred was his third son. He was born here in Lakeland and stayed here all of his life. And he opened up a pharmacy, and until recently, when Mr. Wolfson passed away, Wolfson's Pharmacy was still open just a few years ago. But someone contacted the Queen of England, and they were able to bring a little wooden carving that was done for her, and it was of a mute swan protecting her signets. That was brought here to Lakeland, where they blew it up into this $250,000 bronze sculpture in tribute, again, to Mr. Wolfson.
And if you look right up the road behind where we're seeing, this kind of is a grand opening to what the lake is here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you're coming down Main Street, this will be the first thing you see illuminated at nighttime.
And you do tours once a month for the public. Tell me about that.
It's a nighttime historic tour of Lake Muir. And I explain everything about the lake and all of the history that surrounds the lake for the last 120 years.
Stacy's going to take us around the lake. So Stacy, let's go see what we got.
All right.
This would be a place that folks are going to come and kind of congregate, and it still is. It's true today still.
It was designed to be a gathering place. This is our first Civic Center.
Stacy, I've seen this from across the lake, and now here in person, it looks so much more kind of interesting and spectacular. What did they really use this for early on?
Well, the area where we're standing was actually a small stage. And it's in front of our loggia. The people in the 1920s would sit inside the loggia, and there are benches built into the wall, and little musical events would take place out here. And the loggia served as natural amplification.
So I imagine the acoustics here are pretty good.
Oh yeah, sometimes on a very calm day, you can hear people talking on the other side of the lake in front of this loggia.
You almost want to say, excuse me, you're 500 feet away, but you're talking too loud. That's pretty cool. Now, you've got a chain here on the gate, so I imagine it's not open to the public all the time, but can we go inside there and see what you have?
Sure can.
Yeah, because this is kind of interesting, because they would sit in here and their performers would be out here, and the lake's behind them.
Yes.
What a beautiful setting. You really keep this locked up, I noticed. So
yeah.
This is where this be Stacy's bank is right in here. I guess this is where the people would sit. What is there a special name for this, Stacy?
Well, we're inside the interior of the loggia now.
Wow.
And
I love these high ceilings. And you can hear already the acoustics.
Yeah, the acoustics it was done for the acoustics because of the little musical events they would have out here.
You know, something I can't help but notice, the architecture, the attention to detail, which you may not be able to see. You need to come down in person to check it out for yourself, but it's kind of interesting. There's a lot here to talk about.
Oh yeah, there's grapevines going up the columns at the entrance of the loggia, and inside you can see the benches that were built into the wall for people to sit on.
They were expecting really big crowds, weren't they?
Yeah, crowds were a little bit small in those days.
Now there's doors at both ends here. Where do these doors go?
The doors were to the dressing rooms.
Dressing rooms,
yes.
Okay.
Now they're not dressing rooms anymore. They're just mainly used for storage, but that was their original purpose.
Wow, they were thinking of everything, weren't they? Now we were talking about the sound. The sound is pretty good, and you were saying in here, you could go to one end, I could go to the other, and we could just talk in our regular voices, and should be able to hear us.
It will be loud and clear.
I think we should test this out. What do you say?
All right.
All right, Stacy, we've moved about 60 feet apart. This is not a duel, but maybe about 60 feet away or so. I'm talking in my own level voice. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
I love the acoustics. I love the design. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, this was really designed to send the sound out from the loggia, but you can hear it. You can hear the effect in here.
All right, Stacy, we've kind of made our way partially around the lake, and I see the Amtrak station. Is this all part of this now? What is this?
This is actually a new feature on Lake Mirror. It's called the Railroad Pavilion.
Okay.
And is now part of this walk that we've been taking, which is the Francis Langford Promenade.
Now, this is named after someone who was quite an entertainer and very popular, I guess.
Yes, back in the 1920s, Francis Langford became a big singer and movie star. And she grew up here in Lakeland, graduated from Lakeland High School. And in the 1940s, this walk that we're taking was dedicated to her by the governor of Florida and the city of Lakeland.
And there's actually, you were telling me, a plaque. It's way on the other side of we're always on the wrong side of the lake for everything I'm talking about. I apologize, but she has a plaque.
Yeah, it's over there. And there's the original picture of her standing with our Corinthian columns in the background and the governor of Florida in 1946. But she was really well known for singing with Bob Hope during the USO tours during World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. She was affiliated with Jackie Gleason, Jean Harlow, Clark Gable. Those were her circles of people. And in the 1950s, she had her own television program called the Francis Langford Donamici Show.
Happy November 2nd, all of you people. We hope to goodness it's a real happy month for all of you the whole month through. I can't think of a better way to start a month off than with Francis Langford singing a song. What do you want to sing?
Oh, I think I'll sing Hi Neighbor.
Well, isn't that wonderful? Go ahead.
Hi neighbor, hi neighbor. There was a time life was fine. Love.
I'm not ashamed to say I wasn't around to watch those shows. It's a little before my time, though. But
she did marry Mr. Evinrude, and they lived in a houseboat off the coast of Stuart, Florida, until she passed away a few years ago.
it's interesting where we are now, because as we look back where we were, and there's Main Street, and we look the other direction, there's Main Street, kind of, this is the center point, and here this is,
We have
the
another,
sculpture.
Yeah, we have another piece of artwork. It's done by Albert Paley. He was actually a very famous artist and has a lot of large pieces like this all over the world. This one is called Tribute to the Volunteer Spirit. And it is a little bit controversial because it's a modern piece that's placed in a very neoclassical setting. And some people have a issue with that occasionally.
Right.
But, you know, all around this Francis Langford Promenade, there are different styles of architecture and different kinds of artwork. So there's a whole range of things to see here. And eventually, in time, it all comes together and people let their prejudices go.
But it's interesting, you call it this a tribute to volunteers, and
Yes.
that's just, you were telling me, I guess a kid, a child is one kind of interpreted that, and that's what stayed.
It's a little harder for the adults, but there was a child here that day that a reporter asked him what he saw when he looked at this. And the child said, I see all these different pieces coming together and working together like volunteers. So again, you know, you leave it up to a kid to see through all of the issues right to the core.
Yep. That's interesting. Like I said, everyone sees it a little differently, and they interpret it. I think of my troubled childhood, and that's what I see. But no, it's it works, and it kind of fits in its own way here.
Yes.
With the big plan here, doesn't it? The final stop of the tour, so to speak, and this is the amphitheater. Is this one of the newer parts of what's going on here?
Yeah, this is a new addition to the Lake Mirror Civic Center or Lake Mirror Park or the Francis Langford Promenade for that matter. In the 1920s, our architect, Charles Wolford Levitt, intended for this to be an above-ground 8,000-seat amphitheater.
Wow.
But because of the Florida economic crash in 1926, when this whole project started, that never happened, along with a few other things. And in 2000, the city put a grassy amphitheater in here to keep the tradition somewhat. And it gets utilized quite a bit by all the events that we have here.
Yeah, there are people doing all sorts of things here. It's just great with the grass and the water, and it's just a neat design and everything. One thing we got to mention, we've been talking about this mystery, one of the columns over our shoulder. Tell us about this mystery. What is this?
Here on these columns, there are some coats of arms.
Okay.
And on the coat of arms, there are two fish. Those fish are called barbels, and they're French. And in the real world, those fish only live in the rivers of France and Western Germany. So we know that's a French coat of arms, but we don't know whose family it is. It doesn't apply to anyone involved in the Lake Mirror project in the beginning or even now, or any of the founders of the town. So if anyone can figure out whose family that is, please let us know, because it might open up our history a little bit more.
Absolutely. So there you go. There's a challenge. If you know or have some information, you can contact him, whatever. But the best thing to do really is come down and take the tour yourself.
All right, so just like I promised, you've probably walked Francis Langford Promenade and Lake Mirror several times, but might not have known all of that associated history. So isn't that really kind of cool? Now, another building that you're going to walk by, probably time and time again down at Francis Langford, is the Coca-Cola building. It now serves as the administrative office for the City of Lakeland Fire Department. So when you're out there, make sure to keep an eye out for fire trucks and wave if you see a fireman. The last leg of our tour routes down Florida Ave, State Road 37, to historic Mulberry. Here you will find the Mulberry Phosphate Museum and your final stop, the Bicentennial Capsule. The time capsule will be opened in the year 2076, which doesn't sound too far away anymore, and is representative of what Mulberry was like when America turned 200 years old in 1976. Have you ever made a time capsule? Gather your family and make one to commemorate 2020, with a plan for opening it in 5, 10, or 15 years. You may not realize it, but living through a global pandemic is a pretty significant historical event. Things like masks and bottles of hand sanitizer are clear additions to your box, but there are more meaningful items you can add as well. Let me show you what my family made. So, we have a cardboard box because we've been doing a lot of Amazon ordering, But in our box, we put some things that were really important to us. So of course, for 2020, we have some face masks. This one's my favorite face mask. It has cats on it. But we also have some kind of unpredictable things. We did a lot of outside playing, so we included chalk in our time capsule, as well as bubbles. We also included a cell phone. Now, it's an iPhone, and it probably doesn't look too historic or significant to you, but who knows what phones will look like in 20 years. And I particularly included this because when I was working and we went to work from home, I had to do a lot of work on my cell phone. And it kind of dawned on me at this moment in history, what would it have been like if we didn't have our cell phones? How would we have continued to work and continued on the business that makes America and Polk County great? Such a unique piece of technology and a lifesaver during the pandemic. We also included some artwork and a little toy. And it might not seem like much, but this year for Halloween, when we didn't go trick-or-treating and we kind of stayed home and had a little home party, this little toy provided quite a few hours of entertainment and special memories for my family. So what's going to go in your time capsule? Think about it. Get with your family, make a plan, and the last thing you want to do is write a letter to yourself, to your future selves, saying, hey, this is why we included the things that we did. Okay, so I think we are about ready to get ready and hit the trail. So what we're going to do is take a look at what is in this month's Zoom and Vroom packets. The first item you will find is your driving tour card. You can either punch these addresses in individually or scan the QR code to download the tour from Google Maps. To scan the QR code, simply open your camera and scan. This will prompt you to open a hyperlink to Google Maps. To select a site on the map, click or tap on one of the numbers. This will open additional windows at the bottom of your phone. From those windows, you can select the visible images to see videos or more images about that location, or click the arrow in the diamond to get driving directions from your current location. Once you arrive, close the window to return to the tour map and press the small white back arrow to select your next destination. You will also notice we've added the suggested food stops. These icons have a fun fork and knife on them. Again, just click on the icon to access additional information, including address, reviews, menu, and driving directions. Other goodies in this kit include an official Gator Creek spyglass and some butterfly stickers for decorating it, a field guide for checking off some common animals and plants seen in Polk's environmental lands, a postcard for sending a note about your adventure to loved ones, and a photo prop for all those Instagram-worthy moments. We've also included easy ideas on how to get your little carpenter to work with a visit to your local home improvement store. The last thing you're going to find is suggestions on how to create a time capsule for you and your family to open years down the road. Oh, and how could I forget? You'll have a new friend too with this little wind-up alligator. All right, now you're probably excited to hit the trail. We do have a few of the activity packs left at the History Center, but we have plenty of the driving cards. So feel free to stop by Tuesday through Saturday from 9 to 5 to pick either up. We wanted you to be able to make a day out of this adventure, so we have chosen locations featured along a west to east drive on Highway 98 through Florida Avenue and State Road 37. It's all pretty much one road, but you know, it has a billion names because #Florida. Covering 35 miles, we estimate that with stops, this tour will take 4 to 5 hours or longer if you truly enjoy yourself and take your time. We've included ideas on places that are local to grab a bite to eat and suggestions for photo opportunities. Make sure to tag us out on your adventures. You can use @PolkCountyGovFL, #Zoom and Vroom, #Polk County History Center, or #Visit Central Florida. We'll be giving out prizes for some of the best ones we see. Make sure to join us on March 13th for next month's program, Florida Stories, using your smartphone to explore historic Florida. We'll be partnering with our friends at the Florida Humanities Council and the Lake Wales History Museum to discover the multitude of ways you can use this tremendous tool. Now, until then, I would say happy trails, but because I have my friend here, let's just say happy tails.